Hi, it's Neville Mackenzie here with the Asia Tech podcast. And today my guest is Ee Ling Lim. Ee Ling, can you introduce yourself?
Hi, Neville. Nice to really be on this show. So a little bit of introduction to myself. I am the CEO and the co-founder of Smarter Me. We are an online school that really wants to equip kids and teenagers with the skill set, the heartset, and the mindset for the future. So before starting Smarter Me, I used to be an investment banker for almost 10 years.
Yeah. So how did you go from investment banking to an interest in education?
I think it's really, there was no real one moment per se, but I think since young, I've always wanted to one day retire, set up my own preschool teaching art and craft. And, in the past few years with tech being so prominent and so predominant, and in banking days, I used to cover consumer and technology. So I really saw how technology was being used to improve lives, to disrupt what's the status quo, right? And then one day I looked at my two kids going through school the same way I had gone through. And I realized that really, while the world has changed, education hasn't, right? We talk about edutech being used in certain classes, for example, but by and large, what the kids today are still learning in school hasn't changed in the past few decades. While us outside, we are adults, we're talking about upskilling. The Singapore government is pumping a lot of money into upskilling the adults as well. But yet kids, right? They're not learning anything to do with AI. They're not learning about blockchain technology. They're not learning about digital marketing or even digital design. And all those came together and really made me and my partner decide that, we were going to do something different. We were going to start up Smarter Me and really help inspire these kids and teens to be more than who they thought they were capable of being.
So how old were your children?
9 and 12.
9 and 12.
Yes.
And you aimed the school at what age group?
9 to 17.
9 to 17.
Yes.
So you're planning for their future from an early start.
Yeah.
Okay. So can you just tell me about the mission? I think we've got a slide here that we can bring up. That's the one there.
Yeah. So our purpose is really this, which is to prepare kids and teenagers with the skill set, the mindset, and the heart set for the future. So what do we mean by that, right? So we talk about skill set. Skill set is tech skills to start with, right? So we teach coding, we teach robotics. But the truth is, in 20 years down the road, we have no idea what jobs are going to be out there, right? What we know is that change is constant and change is probably all we can bet on. And so with that, what do our kids really need to succeed in the future? They need to, number one, be very self-aware. They need to know what they like, what their strengths are, how to leverage on that, what their purpose is really. And secondly, also have that resilience, knowing that change is just going to happen, and they need to be persistent and resilient enough to go with it. And so that's why while we teach coding and robotics, we also teach entrepreneurship, which is where the critical thinking skills and problem-solving skills come into play. We teach design thinking, which really where we emphasize a lot on empathizing with users. So better understanding of others, and hopefully during that process, better understanding of yourself as well. And what I'm personally very passionate about is that throughout underlying all our courses, we actually have a mindfulness module. So I use the term mindfulness quite loosely. We don't teach meditation, but rather what we teach is strengths finding. We teach positive mindset, growth mindset, and all this come together to help them really just be more self-aware.
So you're teaching you're looking at an all-round program.
Yes.
for the students.
Yes.
So you mentioned coding and
Robotics,
and,
entrepreneurship, design thinking.
Yeah. Well, my background was as an engineer, and one of the things I deliberately kept from was coding.
Yeah.
Which, as things have moved along, what I found is that I don't need to code today. So why do you think coding will be important, and what? Because when I create a website, I use something like WordPress.
Yeah.
So you think coding is going to be important?
See, I think the way that even I knew coding before, right, has changed a lot. So while you don't need to, and not all of us necessarily need to be coders in the future, that knowledge, that understanding of how things work and how it powers up whatever we see on the surface, I think is important. Beyond that as well is really communication. So for example, I do believe that, for example, I don't code, but I need to communicate with my coder, right? And knowing what works, what doesn't work, and being able to tell him, instead of just insisting that, no, this is how I want it, you just go ahead and code it out, right? Being aware of what the limitations, what the capabilities are of that code is actually important in building that relationship as well. So I do think that in the future, whatever it is that you do for a living, that basic knowledge is essential. And also how we teach it at Smarter Me, it's not, we don't start off with Python, so we don't start off with syntax-based programming, but rather we start off with a visual block-based programming. So for a lot of kids and even a lot of adults, right, it's a little bit daunting looking at that black screen that you absolutely have no idea what it's all about, and feeling that it's such a huge leap that you have to take in order to even gain that knowledge. But we start off using a visual block-based programming called Scratch, which is developed by MIT. And what it does is really, it ignites that interest. It shows kids and teenagers that they are capable of creating something. Because in just, 8 hours or so, they can come up with a simple game. And just being able to see that, wow, this was a game that I used to play before, and now I can actually code it out. I'm capable of that. And also throughout the process, there's a lot of logical thinking as well. So coding is a lot about math, right? So we use a lot of loops, we use a lot of logic if then else. And all this, I think, factors in throughout even your normal non-coding thinking, the way you think logically.
Yeah, I quite like that answer, because if we go back to your first statement where, although I did keep away from coding, I grew up in an age when we used HTML directly to the screen. So now when I look at a WordPress website, I can make small adjustments, but also it allows me to be aware of the issues and the problems that a UX designer will have, instead of saying you need to do this. So you're expanding the areas where teamwork and that sort of compassion that people need to have. But although I don't do it and you're the expert, I understand what issues you will have. So you've been, when were you founded, or when did you get the company started?
So I started working on it in 2016. We launched early 2017.
Yeah. And how has your growth path been in that time?
It's been challenging. It's been exciting. We've also changed a little bit of our business model along the way. So when we first started out in 2016, we did operate a little bit more of a marketplace model. So we focused on all sorts of different enrichment classes, pairing kids and allowing them to find the best instructors for all their learning needs. And throughout that process, we really fine-tuned our offering. We realized what was it that was more essential. And I think in terms of, the growth has been great, right? So we do online classes, we do offline camps as well, and the take-up camp after camp have been improving. So that's very encouraging. But I think ultimately, there's still a lot of mindset change that needs to happen. And I think that's why we are in this, because it's not an easy journey. And I think that all parties, in this whole parenting education equation, the teachers, the schools, the government, the parents, right, need to come together and be able to switch their mindset and see to it that ultimately what our kids need for the future is different from what we needed.
So whose mindset do you think you need to work on first?
I think ultimately it's parents. I do feel so, simply because it's a bit, it's funny, right? As kids, especially when you go through the teenage years, a lot of teenagers become somewhat, rebellious. Perhaps they don't listen to the parents. But ultimately, who do they look up to the most? It's still their parents. A lot of them at this age, when they're 15, 16, they're starting to think about what is it that I want to do for my future. And when you ask them that, the answers that they come up with, if they have thought of a profession before, and you dig in deeper, why do you want to be a doctor or a lawyer or a banker? It's always the parents, whether directly or indirectly. So I'm not faulting the parents at all. It's just that the parents could have made a passing remark that, a doctor is a great profession. Have you thought about that? And that could be well-meaning, right? Because the kid could have been lost, not knowing what they want to do, and the parents were just nudging them along. But that has a huge impact on the kid. And they carry that with them throughout the years that come, even if throughout that process they realize that, I'm afraid of blood. I don't actually want to be a doctor. But they're afraid of even telling their parents that or showing that sense of uncertainty. So I think it again boils back down to communication. I think as we are doing this, we are also seeking to really improve that communication between teenagers as well as their parents.
So what message do you think parents should send to their children?
I think a lot of self-awareness. You see, with the millennial and the older generation, right? You see people start searching for a purpose or for a passion, and we're still in that process. It's going to become more and more prevalent in the future for our kids. There's no reason why parents and kids can't come together and do that together.
So what message do you send to your children?
So my two kids are very different.
Yeah.
The younger one loves coding. The older one is more creative, more design. Ultimately, what we do is we just expose them to everything and help them discover what it is that they're strong in and what they're interested in. And ultimately, we support them throughout that. And for me personally, I share all my challenges with them. So whether or not it's doing the startup, challenges that I face, even when, an employee resigns and I'm feeling a little bit down for the day, I will actually share it with them because I want to let them really see how is it that I face challenges daily as well and how I bounce back and how I think about it.
And do they support you? I mean, how old are you? Said 12?
9 and 12.
9 and 12.
Yeah.
So do they ever give you advice that works?
The funny thing is that sometimes they do, but usually they ask.
Yeah.
They ask questions. They will ask you, why are you feeling like this? And it's a very pure, curious question, right? But as they start prodding deeper and deeper, as they ask more, I find myself questioning myself more as well. And through that whole process, I find myself understanding myself better. So a lot of times it's actually reverse teaching. So I don't seek advice per se from them. Sometimes it comes, but more often than not, that support that you get directly or indirectly, that's the most valuable part. And I think ultimately it's the sharing that's important.
Yeah. So we have another slide here that we can show. So can you just tell, this looks at addressable market. So can you just talk us through this?
Yeah. So when we formed Smarter Me, our main classes are actually conducted online. So it's all live online, which means it's kind of like a group Google Hangouts or a Skype call, but in a proper classroom setting. So at a fixed time every week, the student will log on, the teacher will log on as well, and they actually interact. The reason why we decided to go online instead of setting up a brick and mortar enrichment center is because now, while I started out earlier saying how kids aren't really learning what they need to learn for the future, right? I think Singapore and Singapore children are already pretty blessed in the sense that there's a lot of great teachers here who can already teach the topic. But if you look at outside of Singapore, you look at Malaysia, you look at Indonesia, you look at Bangkok, right? If you have parents there who are aware of what their kids need, yet they can't find the teachers, they can't find that skill set that's required. Traffic is also another big thing. And so by having our school online, we are able to reach out to a wider market. We are able to, more importantly, provide two things. One is accessibility, which is wherever you are, as long as you have internet connection, you can learn, right? And secondly, affordability. By doing it online without rental, we are able to offer our classes at half the price of what it is at a typical center. And so this addressable market is really our aim, right? Which is that if you look at Singapore itself, that's 250,000. Malaysia, that's 2.6 million. In Jakarta itself, that's 600,000. These are all our exact addressable market, taking into consideration English language proficiency, internet penetration rate. And so we are looking at the addressable target market of 1.5 million, right? And the way we see it is that this education is essential, right, for the future. And so we are looking to actually capture a target market of at least educating 80,000, equipping them with the skill set, heartset, and mindset for the future in the next 2 years.
So what would be a typical day for a student enrolled on you? I mean, would they have their normal sort of 9 till 3 lessons? And then how does your classes fit in with that? Or is it a replacement for?
No, it's not a replacement for. So they still go to school as usual. It's just that after school. So we are a little bit more of an after school activity at the moment. Obviously, I do think that it shouldn't be limited to being an after school activity in the future. But as of now, that is the case. So students are typically at home 7 to 9. They come on, they log on to the class after their dinner.
How many days a week?
currently, if you're enrolled for example, coding, it's once a week. So it's 2 hours every week. Yeah, and we do have different classes running on different days.
Yeah, so can you just talk us through what you would aim ideally for an ideal student?
An ideal student. So an ideal student would actually be enrolled in all 4 of our classes. And if not, even if they're enrolled in 1 or 2, they'll be collaborating at some point or another with students from all the other classes, simply because ultimately we want to equip our kids with holistic skill set, right? So a student shouldn't be just learning how to code. They should learn how to apply that coding or robotic skill set and think in a design thinking manner. How do I use those skill set to actually solve a real world problem? How do I go out speaking to people, understanding their problems, and then coming up with a solution for it? And so on one hand, one child could go through all 4 and master all 4 skills. Or on another hand, they could decide that, I still prefer coding and robotics. I still like building and doing the actual coding, but I'm happy working and I know how to collaborate with another student who could be more comfortable, in a design setting, for example.
So the student would be once a week or 2 times a week?
Yes. So if you're enrolled in just 1 class, it's once a week. 2 classes twice a week.
Twice a week.
Yes.
4 classes 4 times a week.
That's right.
Do you think it could be too much? Because a lot of students, they use their mobile devices constantly. And then to do more work on...
So how we view it is that instead of taking away or controlling screen time, which is what a lot of parents are obsessed with, right? How do I control screen time? We ask them, why can't we turn that screen time, right? Changing our kids from being consumers to creators, instead of then spending that time, that 1 hour on YouTube. And they could be consuming good content anyway. They could be watching TED, right? But can we use that 1 hour and replace it with 1 hour of learning instead? Similarly, this is applicable across all sorts of topics. And it's not just limited to them having to join our school, right? I mean, I absolutely think that if a kid likes watching videos, if they're interested in producing videos, and to be honest, many kids today do want to do that. They want to be creators. Why not enroll them in a class where they can learn how to animate stuff, where they can learn how to create videos, so that they're not just purely consuming?
So you have an online class. How do you, in the broader sense of education, how do you see the future of the classroom? Or will there be a classroom in the future? Because my background, I lecture face to face, and I think that can't be replaced. What do you think?
So something exciting that we're working on at the moment is really, number one, is getting it out to as most students as possible, right? And that is achievable by making it online, basically self-paced learning. Because kids today, teenagers today as well, they're absolutely busy. They're swamped with school, but they always have that time at home where they can learn on their own. So we want to be able to incorporate and actually merge, create a hybrid model really, where we combine self-paced learning with the offline learning. So for example, they could be doing 4 lessons on their own at home. And after every 4 lessons, we will have an in-person session, right? An in-person workshop where they now meet all their friends who've been going through the same class and actually test their skills.
Where
to
would
see
they
if
meet those people?
Well, it could be in Singapore. There are locations in Singapore. It could be on a webinar as well. That could be another option. Yeah.
Yeah. So the option to meet face to face.
Yes.
Is that I think that's
important.
Yeah.
We do think it's important.
Yeah.
Ultimately, like I said at the start of the show, right, which is that collaboration and communication is absolutely important and critical for the future. And that's how we can ensure that while they are learning on their own, self-paced, which enables them to learn more, there has to be that component where they all come together and collaborate and communicate. And that's something we will facilitate.
And that would be at the camps?
That would be at the camps. That could be at the weekend boot camps as well.
Yeah. Okay. So how are you expanding? Are you looking for investors, or are you self-sustained in your growth?
So we do have angel investors in the company at the moment. We are looking to fundraise, not actively yet, but we are looking to fundraise in the coming months.
And how did you did you use your own money to get the company going?
Yes. Yeah.
So
we bootstrapped for a while.
Okay. So you didn't have to sell anything?
No.
You just saved up and got it going.
Yes.
Was that an easy process, or to make the decision to get going, or was it because giving up your own job
Yes.
and then doing a startup, because the job would have been stable, wouldn't it?
Yes. I must say, after being in banking for about 10 years, it wasn't an easy decision. I had a very supportive partner who really pushed me to a certain extent to actually take the leap of faith, right? So it wasn't an easy decision, but I think I reached that point in time when I was questioning myself as to what really was my purpose. And at that point in time, I realized that my purpose was really to inspire others. And I wasn't going to be able to do that where I was in banking. No doubt it had been a great job. I would have still had a great career. But I decided that, if I really set my heart to be doing something else, there's no better time. There's never an absolutely right time. And so I made the leap of faith at that time.
And are there many competitors in your industry?
There are many coding schools available in Singapore, the brick and mortar coding schools, who are doing great as well. But I think we're the only ones who actually offer this skill set and mindset and heartset all in one on a platform that's so accessible at an affordable rate as well. And what makes us different as well is because we strongly believe that ultimately whatever it is that you learn, it has to be relevant to the real world. And so we've brought in corporate partners who actually provide a challenge to the students, and they complete it after they go through the basic learning. So as an example, for robotics, right? We partner with someone called Garuda Robotics, who actually works with the government quite a lot. They're one of the leading drone makers and solution providers. So they've actually crafted out a challenge for our students. So after 6 weeks of learning robotics, our students will actually have to build a robot that meets the requirements of Garuda Robotics according to the challenge. So it's really exciting because the challenge is based on a real world problem.
So do they have to build a robot from scratch? They get their hammers and screwdrivers out, or is it the code inside?
No. So with Lego Robotics, we actually use something called a virtual robotics world. So they don't even need to buy the robot itself. They are building it on the computer. And that's great because while you don't feel it in hand, the truth is that robotic kits are expensive. They cost, 500 to 600 per kit. Not many children, not many families are going to be able to afford that. So now kids are actually able to build a robot and program it to move on the virtual world.
So where do you see your company going in the next 6 months?
So in the next 6 months, or rather in the next 12 months, really, I think we're really looking to equip more and more kids with this skill set and the mindset. Be it through our online courses, our hybrid courses, or our offline camps. I think ultimately I want to make sure that it's not just the wealthy or the high-income kids who are able to afford all these future skills, but rather every children should get the opportunity to do so.
So for you, what are the major challenges to being an entrepreneur?
Major challenges. Well, there's many, and I think those sound really unique. I guess the one biggest one which always happens is really finding the right team. The right team who share the same purpose, share the same vision. Yeah.
So recruitment, is that recruitment?
Recruitment is one.
So how do you go about recruiting the right team? Because that comes up a lot.
Yes. We do have to be very disciplined. And I think as entrepreneurs, and if you've struggled with hiring for a while, it's sometimes easy to just find the next one that says yes, right? And so it takes a lot to really just keep going at it, be disciplined and saying no when you feel that something just isn't right. So I think that's one. The other challenge that I think we face, but it's an exciting one, is really the mindset change. Every day we're brainstorming, how is it that we can help parents and help children see differently?
And how big is your team? How many people working in the company?
There's 4 of us at the moment.
4 of you?
Yes.
And are you looking to expand on that?
So with 4, in fact, for the longest time, it was just me and the lead developer.
Yeah.
So we are already 100% increase in the recent months. So I think we're okay for now. Yeah.
And how do you create your courses?
How do we create our courses?
Yeah.
So our courses are actually taught by a mixture of MOE teachers as well as practitioners.
MOE?
Ministry of Education teachers,
okay,
right?
Yeah.
So teachers who've been in the system for many, many years, who are experienced teaching kids. We've also got practitioners on who have also had some education background, and they teach out of passion, but really they're practitioners by profession. And we create the curriculum together with them. So all our curriculum are based on, for example, our robotics course is based on Carnegie Mellon Robotics Academy's curriculum. Our coding is based on Apple Swift Playground. Our design thinking course is, of course, based on Stanford D schools, right? Yeah, so we create the curriculum together with our teachers.
And has that been a challenge to get those people on board, or is it something that you, through your contacts, were able to do?
We were able to do it through our contacts. I wouldn't say that it was absolutely easy, because ultimately, finding a teacher to teach isn't hard. It's finding the right teacher with the right passion, the right purpose, the right style that really fits what we want to do. That was the tricky part, but we were able to do so. I'm really happy with the teachers we have now.
And do you think you'll move into other areas of education, or will you stick to the STEM?
No. I think ultimately what we want to do is prepare them for the future, right? And it shouldn't be limited to this four. Absolutely not. So we've gotten requests to even teach things like financial literacy. So obviously, being an ex-banker, that's something that I think is absolutely important as well, and that's something that we will look to roll out in the future. Teaching kids how to really understand money and invest in money more. Isn't it funny how, the moment we graduate from school, the first thing, what we are set out to do is earn money.
Yeah.
And yet for the first 18 years of your life, you're not taught how to.
No.
Right? So that's one. There are a couple more exciting things that we have in the pipeline, including digital design, also including esports. Yeah.
Esports. I think that might be your most popular course.
That's gaming, yes. I think it's also really changing mindsets rather than... So if you're interested in gaming, for example, you don't have to be a professional gamer. Similar to athletes, right? Only the top 5% actually make it. So it's the same in the gaming world. But there are a lot of other roles in the industry. You could be a esports marketer, you could be an esports commentator, you could be an esports manager as well. Yeah, so that's how we are trying to really help kids bridge from their interest to something that they can actually see themselves doing in the future.
And can you just tell me something about your partner? I mean, how does your partner support you?
Okay, so my partner is my husband, right? And he's running his own startup now as well. He left a very stable job. So he used to head up strategy and business development at IHH, which is one of the world's largest healthcare company. And he left that job a year ago to also, number one, help out with Smarter Me, but number two, also launch his own startup, which is in healthcare. I think in terms of support, ultimately, we're the kind of couple that, we don't have boundaries in the sense that we don't say, okay, we work 9 to whatever time it is, and the moment we go home, no work talk. We don't set that. I think to us, we are both very passionate about what is it that we are doing. And to have a spouse, a partner really going through the same thing as me, that's actually pretty valuable. Because
but you have more experience, don't you?
No, I wouldn't say that, because he knew what I was going through, and he helped out a lot despite having a full-time job, right? He was fully involved in Smarter Me while I was doing operations, but strategy point of view, he was always there. He's always there. So we can always bounce ideas off each other. We know each other's struggles. We know each other's strengths as well. So I think that's very helpful, because I'm very clear what my strengths are. He's very clear what his strengths are, and we know what each other's are. So we are able to balance that quite okay. And
your friends and family, or maybe your parents,
yes.
How do they view what you're doing?
So, my dad is no longer around. He passed away when I was much younger. My mom was actually a teacher, a retired teacher. So, of course, when I left a very well-paying job to do this, she was a little bit concerned. And then when my husband left his job to do a startup as well, she was even more concerned. But I think ultimately, she's supportive. I mean, she says, you guys are still young. Do whatever it is that you see right. And similarly, my parent-in-laws as well, they're very supportive. So every time we speak, they'll always be asking how the business is. And I think more importantly, instead of asking how the business is with the hope of hearing a positive answer, they actually will tell us that not to worry, it takes time to build a business, just go at it.
Do they have experience of building a business?
My father-in-law ran a small business before in his past. Yeah, so he knows the struggles of what it is like being an entrepreneur.
And ultimately, if everything goes to plan and the business grows successfully, where do you see yourself in, say, 5 or 10 years with the business?
With the business, I mean, again, I would like to see it going global. I would like to see our content, our curriculum being adopted on a personal level, students or kids and teenagers globally, but also being used in schools as well. Yeah, I think a lot of schools are also still figuring out how do they incorporate all these future skills into their existing curriculum. And I would like to see us being partners with them, growing it throughout and making it global.
And where, Europe or the US or
So-
non-English speaking countries, would that be?
I think in terms of, we will still be focusing on Asia at the moment, and there will be a lot of localization involved already, right? Because even Jakarta, while there's still a big English-speaking population, obviously, in order to make it big there, we need to localize it to Indonesian. Same in Thailand. And I think the other 2 or 3 markets we'll be looking at is really Hong Kong, China, Korea, and Japan.
Yeah.
And we're already seeing some interest from there.
From
From those countries. Sending their kids over to Singapore to really see how is it that education is being done here.
Okay, so thanks, Ee Ling Lim. And if anyone wants to get in touch with you, how can they get in touch?
So they can go to smarterme.sg. That's our website. And I'm also on LinkedIn under Lim Ee Ling.
Yeah, and we will be putting show notes, the links in the show notes. Is that right? Yeah, we will. Okay. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.